can you kind of key us in on some of the trends or the data you see when it comes to just the future opportunities in the world of ad tech that you would encourage a younger brother or sister to look into?
Also a great question. Yes. The first thing that I would say is don't let these words scare you off.
That's good.
Data, data, analytics, media, insights, all of these things are really just keywords. They're industry lingo in the same way that in basketball you say crossover. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just industry lingo and terms. These are not ideas that are beyond the realm of grasping. But to talk more about the opportunities they're in, I would say the real opportunity and skill set that's going to prove itself to be very helpful in the near future is one, going to be speaking, and then two, interpretation. What do I mean by that? Speaking is really just the opportunity to communicate a message, right? So, and do so intelligently, also succinctly, in a way that the audience and the person that you're speaking to can actually, kind of grasp what you're saying. And then the other one is translating. Data and insights present themselves in two fashions: in numbers, that's the actual data part, and in graphics, right? And those would be like anytime that we're actually looking at a graph, very similar to what we've been seeing for COVID, right?
Right.
Dr. Burks, who's also a Penn State grad like myself, has been just interpreting graphics. That is going to be a high skill, because what's happening in the market is companies are building automated technology platforms that can analyze the data. So that is a skill set that I've had to acquire over my many years in this field, analyzing the data. Now technology is actually being built out there that can analyze it for you. What you need at that point is someone to interpret it, to take the analysis and be able to convey that to someone else in a very intelligent and succinct way. Like I was saying, communicate.
It looked like you fell out of the universe.
Laptop.
That's funny.
So that's the skill that's necessary, is being able to communicate data. So as people begin to look into jobs, I would say understanding what's actually happening. So having a bird's eye view of the fact that this pandemic is having an impact across the world, not only on students going to school, right? I am affected myself. Internet learning is not my strong suit. But then there's going to be data points that come out of that, right? How many people have been learning online? How many people began an online course and then didn't complete it? Right? These are all just data points that will eventually need to be interpreted by someone for a new job employee to say, the person that are using our technology, not only are they all teachers, but these teachers are predominantly of this age group and predominantly teach in this specific student demographic, so that they can go back to their business partners and say, hey, maybe our technology should be more appealing to a particular audience. So it's communicating, number one, as a skill set that I think will be very helpful, and that kind of tails into storytelling. And then also, just really having a beat on what's happening around you as far as the industry. Find your interests, and no matter what your interest is, the technology exists to ensure that people have access to it, right? So
yes,
no matter what your interest is, there is data that surrounds it. And if you are an expert, as in really well learned in something that you're interested in, interpreting the data actually becomes that much easier, because these references actually make a lot of sense to you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And Brandon, can you tell us just a bit about your story? Because I think it's helpful to know how you got into this space, how you were able to navigate from, being a D1 football player, right?
Sure.
At was it the Ohio State or no, Penn State?
The Penn State, that's
the
right.
Penn State, to coming and taking that same, skill set of like hard work, focus, to
Sure.
get into this space. How did you find this to be your area of interest?
That's a great question also. So I'd always been interested in advertising since I was about 10 or 11. And it was really just the idea of, the psychology behind selling someone a product is what drew me and what piqued my interest. Now, to really talk about how I made my way into it. So in the time of 2000, 2001, which is when this interest peaked for me, there were no apps. right? There were
That's
no
true.
smartphones. So my interest in advertising was purely about creating commercials. When I got to college, again, talk about having foresight, I began to see how the industry was changing, how these apps are actually changing the way that people interact with their devices, changing the way that information gets sold. So I started thinking to myself, how can I make the transition into advertising, understanding where it is today? My first job out of college, however, was not directly in the type of advertising that I would have liked it to have been. Instead, it was based in sales, and I created documentaries for
Wow.
emerging economies, right? So I literally traveled around the world and lived in different countries, selling the idea of a documentary to the government and to companies. Now, included in this documentary was advertising space, right? So I had to also sell the ad space. So that's what got me interested in understanding, okay, this is what the value of advertising is as a whole. So the first part was understand what the value proposition is of my interest, right? If it is medicine, obviously medicine is to heal the body, but then why do specific segments of the population seek out certain services or seek out certain medicines for particular healing? So understanding the application is where I would start of your passion and your interest. And then when it came to me continuing to make my way into the field where I desired, I'd been working for that company abroad, in Panama, Central America specifically.
Wow. That's cool.
I received a job interview in New York City that, again, was not directly in advertising. But as I thought about it, how am I going to make my way there? I had to think about the steps along the way. As long as I'm doing something that's going to give me a skill set that is transferable into the field that I'd like to be in. So I'm moving, it may not be straight up the ladder, but it's diagonal, right? I made one step and I got to that diagonal pedestal that helped me get a little bit closer, even though it's not exactly where I want to be. So I was in New York. I'm now working at a technology recruiting company. And my job was to find opportunities for people to get hired, right? And as I'm doing this, my company decided that they wanted to pivot in technology and specifically start hiring roles that are technology based. Go figure, some of the roles that we were actually filling for were advertising companies, but technology roles specifically. So as
Wow.
I'm reviewing some of these job descriptions and the resumes for people that I'm trying to get this job for, I'm like, you know what? This skill seems learnable, right? This skill seems
Yeah.
like something that I could actually get into a company early and actually just learn how the business is functioning, and then I can grow from there. And that's exactly what